Hello, and welcome to the recap of the second session of the EHC Leadership Academy. Due to the technical reasons, we are not able to share with you the recording of the session. Therefore, we decided to offer you a recap of the session. So just to, in a nutshell, offer you things that we discussed and the main insights that we had during this meeting. So the session was entitled First Stop: Who are the people in my community and outside my community? And as the title already tells you, this session was dedicated to exploring a little bit what kind of bleeding disorders are there within the NMOs of the EHC and in the network of the EHC, and also to see what are the needs that these people have and whether we are doing enough to meet those needs. So just a few sentences about what we did. So first of all, we looked to a series of videos from the people with a great variety of bleeding disorders. That means platelet disorders, also hemophilia A and B in its various severities, also Van Willebrand, so all kind of bleeding disorders that are out there. And we did look at their experiences, what they've had with being in a bleeding disorder community, and what kind of misconceptions they have experienced. On the EHC virtual event platform, you will find also brief recap from these videos in a fact sheet, where you can learn more about the bleeding disorders and also understand what are the things that the people were talking about. After we had heard from all these people with different bleeding disorders about their experiences, their needs, and their worries also, we wanted to go into more concrete action, and we went into actually practical work on the mural. That's the tool that we've been using for the leadership academies, and we did discuss further what are the needs that people with various bleeding disorders have, and the needs that we need to address, so that all of these people can be included equally, and no one would be left out from the bleeding disorder community and feel isolated or uncared for. And I will share with you the mural that we worked on, and then we can have a look together at the things that we discussed. So we called it Let's Gather Seeds. We discussed needs and problems that were worded by people who were affected by them, so meaning people in the video, but then also the participants of the meeting express their different needs, also being representatives of different bleeding disorders. We ended up with 5 different groups of needs that there are. So let's zoom in a little bit and have a look. So we have, and of course, and the focus was mostly on those bleeding disorders that are not cared for enough just yet. So there was one of the focuses was on the treatment. There was mentioned treatment pipelines, correct treatment, so that people are receiving treatment that's matching their diagnosis. Then we have also advocating for extended use of current treatments that are there already, information about treatment options. Also, research and development for the future treatments was mentioned as a need, as well as access to treatments right now, so that there is no further delay for some people who have the treatment options there, but still don't have the access. Then another area that we talked about was knowledge and information. And there, the specific needs that were mentioned. So these are the unmet needs, well, both met and unmet needs that people have listed there. So of course, it will depend on the context. Sometimes it will be needs that are met, and sometimes those will be the needs that are not met, but here they all are listed. So knowledge and information, which would be better knowledge and understanding of all bleeding disorders, consistent care over the time, even as doctors change. So here we talk about transfer of knowledge rather between the doctors, also within the NMO it can be applied as well, I would say. Then we talk about knowledge about the disease itself, so about all different bleeding disorders, similarly to as we talked about already. Understanding one's own disease was mentioned, so symptoms and severity as well of the future prospects, and this is somewhere where this knowledge and information can help both from the side of the healthcare professionals, but also from the side of the NMO. This can be tackled. So an important aspect there as well. Then we've talked about lack of knowledge from the side of the healthcare professionals. So there's not enough understanding and knowledge about all different bleeding disorders. So that's quite specific need as well. And then we talked also about recognition from the doctor, so that the doctors are also aware and acknowledge and recognize that there are other possibilities of bleeding disorders than just hemophilia, or for example, also I think that was mentioned in a context that also women can have hemophilia, and things like this. And finally, we talked about the need for education of all healthcare professionals, not only specialists at the treatment centers, but also all the healthcare professionals. Then we moved on to a need from for the area of need, which was classified as support from the NMOs. And let's zoom in here as well. And their specific needs that came in this area was that would be the need of not feeling alone. So then when you're part of the NMO, when you're supported, then you don't feel alone. There's lack of awareness and support, with a typo. Risk of separation with an NMO, if there is, so that's already, it's kind of not a need so much, it might be already, it's more like a problem statement if the needs are not met. Then lack of informational materials. Again, understanding of own disease, symptoms, severity, and future. This I put also here under NMOs, because I think this can be, it can be tackled from many different aspects, as I was saying. And then also need for network and exchange, and contact with fellow sufferers were mentioned. So this excuse me, the psychosocial support also in terms of in the NMO context. Then speaking of psychosocial support, that was whole other area of needs where we identified. So there was not so many sub needs, but just they are all groups. So psychosocial support and medical information, access to psychosocial support for everybody, or for severe hemophilia A, also young people. So not only a few handful of people, but for everybody who needs that. Also, there is a mention of lack of compassion from family, peers, community, and doctors. So this is also a need that needs to be addressed, and acknowledge. Also, this is mentioned as the psychosocial problem, that acknowledgement of carriers as bleeders as well. So, and then it's suggested to call the carriers people with hemophilia, actually, which is already what I mentioned before. Also, the acknowledgement from the doctors as well that also women can have hemophilia. And then finally, the last area that we are zooming in, last area of needs, is the needs around diagnosis. So yeah, that's also linked more probably to specific groups of bleeding disorders, but also could apply to everybody. So timely diagnosis, clear guidelines for each diagnosis, as well of what to do and what are the steps then to take once you're diagnosed. Assessment, knowing what is normal and what is not, in terms of there is not always the definition of what is normal. So there's not enough awareness of one's own bleeding disorder in that sense. And then also 2 mentions of earlier and better diagnosis as well. So those were the needs that were mentioned, and that we thought as a group of the participants, we thought that this was these were the important things to discuss and focus on in our work for better inclusion of all people with bleeding disorders. The next step that we took, we did learn a new method, a way to tackle problem or to approach a problem before we start working on it. And this is called problem tree, or also sometimes problem and solution tree, because it helps you understand the problem, and it also helps you refine the solutions for it, and more kind of have more targeted approach to tackling your problem. So I will show you once again, for those of you who were at the session 2 of the leadership conference, you already saw the presentation, but I've changed it a little bit with examples of from the ideas what we talked about actually. And you will also see we did if you go on the mural that we just saw, there will be also the problem solution tree that we actually worked on during the session, and I took the examples from this this work that we did in the presentation. So let me share my screen again and quickly walk you through the presentation, because this will also help you prepare for the session 3 that's coming already next week. And I've asked you all in an email, I've asked you to do a small homework, and of course you are not it's not a mandatory thing. It's just something that may help you if you look to work with something within your NMO, or even personally, or somehow if you want to address inclusion of people with bleeding disorders or anything else. So for the presentation, problem solution tree, let me share my screen. So here we are again. So just a very quick walkthrough about what is a problem tree. So the problem tree is actually a method that helps you work a problem, and it helps you understand all the causes that you can, all the known causes, because as we know, there is like also not everything we can know, but it will help you identify all the known causes and effects for the problem that you are looking to work with. Why to do a problem tree? So I think, like from my perspective, it just helps to split things down and understand better what's going on and what is, because as you know, in life, things are never straightforward and nothing is ever black and white. So a problem tree will just help you understand what are the different causes of the problem, because there will be it will be rarely that there is just one cause, because things in life are complex, and so there will be always more than one cause to a problem, and more than one actor also involved in creating those causes for the problem, and maybe for the cause there will be also a sub cause and more like this. So it will help you just to understand what's constituting the problem that's at hand. And also, of course, we may not be able to deal with all of this, so therefore it's important also to split it down to understand how the problem is built, so to see what you can actually resolve and what you need to look for solutions somewhere else, or someone else needs to deal with this. Yeah, so and also it helps you understand what you can actually do. So yeah, so I think for me, I think it's a very useful tool just to help understand and break down the things that you are facing as a problem. So what are the steps that we need to take to create this problem tree? And here I want to say, it of course we can always do on our own and think about things and analyze, and it works as well. But in my personal experience, it's really useful method also to do as a brainstorming in a group, and then you can put on a flip chart, you can put with post-its, and you can move them around and work with it that way. And then it shows you, it helps you see things from different perspectives, because all the members in your working group, in your NMO, they will have different ideas how things are, why things the way they are, and what are the causes and also the effects. So the steps that we need to take is, first of all, to settle on the core problem. So of course, as it's not unknown that you need to choose what you want to work on, because of course we just saw in the analysis that we did, we saw that there are plenty of needs and plenty of problems also that need to be addressed and that need to be solved, so that we can include everybody in our NMOs. Nevertheless, we will not be able to work on everything at the same time. So we need, of course, to settle on one thing. So you first of all settle on the core problem. Then the second step is to identify the causes and effects, and we will talk shortly about it. And then finally, also the nice part about this problem tree is that you can also at the end, you are able to turn it into a solution tree, and it helps you see what are your objectives for work on this problem. And then finally, as a fourth step, you can select the preferred intervention, or or more simpler words, that would mean you would define the steps that you want to make to deal with this problem. So the core problem, what is a core problem? Needs to be something very specific that you want to focus on. So here, as an example, we've given saving the water inside the home. So it wants to change. We want to overcome this very specific problem, say, to save the water inside the home. And here, as opposed, a really broad problem will not work for that, because then it's it's too much again. And as we said before, like there are many things, but you need to choose something one and specific in order to be more successful in resolving that. So here as an example is mentioned saving water in general, but that's too it will have too many causes, and you will not be able to tackle it in a meaningful way. So therefore it's very important to choose a specific problem. And I think in our case we did have already 5 specific areas there what we mentioned, and we did also have quite specific sub problems. So I think in your context, if you would like to do this homework, you could choose one of these things that we already, that's the most relevant for you, or your NMO, and you could work with this, and this being a very specific problem already. Then the next step would be identifying the causes and effects. So that would be already starting to work and to break down the problem. So you would place the core problem in the center of the tree. Then there you need to imagine that there's a tree. So the problem will be the tree trunk in the center of the tree. And then you need to think about what are the direct causes of the problem, and those you put below as below the core problem. So those will be the roots of the problem. So the causes are as the roots, and it's important to put all these statements in a negative terms, because so for example, as lack of knowledge, not enough information about this or that. And then you would put the direct effects of the problem on above the problem. So that would be the crown of the tree, the leaves would be the effects that the problem would have if not resolved, or also then later we'll see if resolved, what will change. So let's have a look at an example so that it's becoming a bit less abstract. So as I said, we did choose a specific problem to work on during the session, and you will find also the actual tree that we created on the mural that you have access to, and there it looks a bit more nice and looks like an actual tree. But so the problem that we chose is risk of separation within the NMO, and this means more in the context there is a risk of separation within the NMO if all the bleeding disorders are not included to an equal standing. So that means also von Willebrand and ultra rare and so on. So here, this we stated as a core problem. Then further on, we looked at some of the causes of the problem. And as I was saying, there may be more than one cause. And what is nice, in fact, is to sometimes to try and do this analysis you can of course do it on your own and on paper, on post-its, as you want to make it nicer looking like a tree, and it works well enough if you do it alone. But it's very, very useful tool if you use it in a group within your NMO, in your project group, in your working group, because then it gives you an opportunity to look at the things from different perspectives, because each of us, as we know, each of us comes with a different luggage, each of us has different life experience, professional experience. So there may be also possibilities to look at the problem and the causes of this problem from all kind of different points of view, and make it maybe more make it possible to understand it better. So for this problem, we found 4 causes that I want to present you here. So one is lack of recognition of the other by the mainstream, lack of proactivity for von Willebrand disease patients, though that was meant that they themselves could be more active in order to be better included. There's also mention of lack of collaboration between the healthcare professionals and the NMOs, and lack of understanding of the actual needs of people with all the bleeding disorders. So this is something, that there's just a superficial maybe understanding, but not understanding enough well what the needs are. And as I was mentioning, it's very likely that each of these causes will have also a sub-cause, because things are never simple in life. So we also managed for some of them to identify the sub-causes, and you will see in the tree, in the mural, it's more extensive. Here I will offer you 2 sub-causes of the causes. So the lack of collaboration between healthcare professionals and NMOs, and cause for this is that there is not among the healthcare professionals and also the NMOs, I imagine this is not specified, that there's not enough awareness about different bleeding disorders, and also there is lack of interest of the healthcare professionals in the more rare bleeding disorders. So they don't want to specialize in this because, yeah, for I don't know what reasons, but this is what was the subcause. So these are the problem and its causes. And of course, if we would talk more, we would find more, but let's leave it here for the moment. And then let's look at a couple of the effects of the problem, what might happen. So the effects are, what in this case, what would happen if this risk of separation within an NMO would not be prevented, and if there would be some separation would happen. So the two effects, there are more than two effects as well, I imagine, possible to define, but here we've identified two. So one is loss of the inner force of the NMO. So there is when there is a separation and people don't work in solidarity and unity, there is loss of inner force. And also, if there is an actual separation is happening, one of the effects will be also loss of weight in advocacy towards the external world, the external stakeholders, because when you speak with one voice, as we know, it can be much stronger. So these are the example of the effects. So this is how the problem tree looks like. And I would like to underline again the two things. So one thing, it's important for when we look at the problem tree, it's important to put all the terms in the negative sense, so that it's a lack of, not enough, loss of, risk of, so that we do have the negative terms for the problem tree. And the second one, the second thing that I want to underline is try to split it down as much as you can, because then it will be easier to identify actually what are the steps that you can take, what is the cause of the problem that you need to tackle first, or that's simpler to tackle first. So it will, the more you split it down, the easier it will be to tackle and address the problem. So then let's go for the next step and talk about solution tree. Because solution tree is then something that is a next step that can help you work on this problem. And it's actually a very simple step, and there is not very complicated something to do, but it's a step that will give you objectives and ability and make you be able to see what you can actually, what you would be able to do and what you need to do first and so on. So it's a simple step to do. You need to reverse all the negative statements into positive ones. So for example, where you will have lack of knowledge, it would become increased knowledge, and so on. And let's have a look. And so on. This way, it will give you objectives for actual work and very concrete objectives. So let's look at our tree that we have here on the post-it. So risk of separation within an NMO. So here, this I have not changed, but here, let's say averted risk. So in the positive, no risk of separation within NMO. The effects of that would be strong NMO internally, and also strong NMO in terms of advocacy. And then in order to have no separation or avert the separation, then our causes would turn into what needs to be done. So these are the objectives to achieve to avoid this risk. And you have already very clear objectives. So recognition of the other by the mainstream, proactive von Willebrand, and here I added other subgroups because everybody involved has responsibility and they need to be involved, proactive, strong collaboration between healthcare professionals and NMOs, and understanding of needs, understanding of the actual needs of all the bleeding disorder, people with all the bleeding disorders. And here also for the sub causes turn to be awareness about different bleeding disorders and interest of healthcare professionals in more rare bleeding disorders. So here, by having this solution tree, you can see that it gives you very clear objectives that you can, under each of these, you could more easily analyze. Is it feasible for me to do? Is it feasible for my NMO to do? Does it need to be addressed by somebody else? And if so, who? And how can I support that work? And it can also give you possibility to list very concrete steps that you need to take in order to reach those objectives. I also want to show you the problem tree that we developed with this exact example also on the mural, because there we do have some of the concrete steps already listed as well, and that can serve maybe as an inspiration. And you can see we have causes for the problem, we have solution/objective, and we have ideas for action in purple. So here, for instance, where we talked about, I think, the sub-causes, let's have a look at this. So for the sub-causes here, sufficient awareness of all bleeding disorders. So that concrete steps that can be taken is sharing personal stories and start talking about all the bleeding disorders. And also interest of the healthcare professionals in the more rare bleeding disorders. So here concrete steps that can be taken is listed, create networks or joint clinics and international telemedicine. So you can see, and also for the other causes and sub-causes, we have already identified some concrete steps that can be taken. And so with this, I would like to invite you also maybe to have another look at the mural, have a look at the problems or needs, unmet needs or met needs that need to be taken care of that we've identified, and try to think what is relevant for you, what is relevant for your NMO, and if it's something that you would like to work on, please do so on the worksheet that's available for you in your email or on the resource gallery on the EHC virtual event platform. We'll have a look at this again during the third session of the Leadership Academy that will take place on the 24th of February, already next Thursday. And I look forward to seeing you all then. Oh, and one more thing. When we try to think about the steps that we need to take, sometimes it's very hard to think, what can I do? Because it's all also big, and all these needs are very hard for me or even for my NMO to tackle and address. But I invite you also to look at another section on the mural that we have that focuses on ideas and development of ideas. And here I've put some of the tips about what helps generate ideas. And here we have things like breaking old thinking patterns, making new connections, finding fresh perspectives, purposefully developing bad ideas, even because then among all these bad ideas, you may also find a good idea, and also thinking like a kid. So have a look at these suggestions when you think about the concrete steps that you might want to take, and maybe something good and something crazy will come out of this. I look forward to hearing all about these ideas. See you.